Good morning, everybody. I hope we're all well. We're pretty excited. We've actually moved back into our office this week. So I'm actually finally sitting in the office after many months. So it is a big week for us from celebrating being back here. So thank you everyone for joining us this morning. Look, I hope you've been enjoying our fortnightly webinars that we've been running. There are quite a few different topics, not all bid related, but like everything when it comes to marketing and tendering and business development, it's all sales related. So I'm sure that regardless of the topic that you would get something out of all the webinars that we're currently running, and it also gives you a chance to meet the rest of the team here at Focused. Look, as you all know, again, tendering is a topic that I am pretty passionate about. Bids are incredibly expensive. They are very time consuming, and they are how we in business win major contracts. So it's an integral part of how we do business and how we keep moving forward. Now, obviously, now more than ever, it is super important for us to win new work and to protect our business. This is something that if for some reason in your specific industry things have slowed down a little bit, take the time to stop and think about your bid library. It is a super important piece of the puzzle when it comes to tendering, and I really encourage you, if you have been, a little bit of leeway at the moment to invest some time and energy, stop putting it off and get stuck into it. So my hope and desire today is that you walk away with a couple of points that you can implement immediately and stop making excuses and actually start making it happen. Look, we're focused on creating the ultimate bid library. For us, it's all about winning. We always want to put our best foot forward, and who doesn't love winning? Let's be honest, we all want to be on the winning team. So let's get stuck into it. Now, normally this session is an interactive session, so I really do encourage you all to actually get involved. There's a Q&A on the side panel that you should see that we have set up for teams. If you have a comment or a question, please interact. This is based on my experiences, having been doing tendering now for over 20 years, but everyone comes at it from different experiences. And I know, looking at the list of attendees, there are quite a few of you that are very experienced in tendering, and there are some of you that are relatively new to tendering. So there's something in this for everyone today. So the sorts of things that we're going to look at today are some approaches to setting up and maintaining a bid library, and we'll spend quite a bit of time on that. Then we're also going to have a bit of a chat about how to repurpose and how to reuse content. And obviously there's been a bit of a debate, depending on who you are, what your experience is. Everyone has different views on that topic, which we'll talk through. And some time-saving technologies. Who doesn't love saving time? That's a must, particularly in tendering where everything has got a deadline, and it's super important that we have all our ducks lined up in a row. Now, interestingly enough, bid libraries is something that I am even more passionate about, being that when I started tendering, like a lot of us, we get thrown in the deep end, and worked for a large international construction company. I was based in London, and I was in the marketing team, and they were short-staffed one day and said, "Hey, how about you do this tender?" And I'm like, "I don't even know what a tender is. What are you talking about? This is a strange thing." And I grabbed it and I was like, yeah, I'll give anything a go. And then was absolutely gobsmacked by the fact that they were a very successful organisation with a strong brand, a strong image, and winning amazing projects. I could not find one scrap of information to save my life. It didn't matter where I went, where I looked, no one knew where anything was, and I just kept getting referred to, oh, go and have a look at that old tender, there should be something in there you could use. There was no central place for really some pretty basic information. So that I think, well, that was my first bid library that I set up. After my first tender, the first thing I did was actually go, this is not okay. It was incredibly stressful. We need to have a system in place here. So I've been doing these for over 20 years now, and the key elements haven't really changed. And still I go to a lot of organisations and they don't have them. And I'm always a little bit surprised by that. Today might also be for you a opportunity to speak to maybe the higher powers within your organisation and go, guys, we need to take this more seriously. You know, we do tenders constantly or once in a while, whatever the situation is. It doesn't matter. A library is required to increase your chances of success. And I love this statistic. It's kind of scary, but as a human being, we spend an average of 5,000 hours looking for things around the home. Now, I know some of you are going, actually, I live with somebody, my partner. Yeah, I would probably triple that number or maybe double it. So I do have a bit of a giggle about that. But it's crazy that we spend so much time looking for stuff just at home. And then when you come into the workplace, and I'm an employer, it's terrifying that workers can spend up to 30% of their day looking for their stuff to do the job. And that's not unusual. I think we also saw a spike, and for us as an organisation, we've been very fortunate that we have maintained projects and been as steady within the projects that we have with COVID happening, but we definitely saw a spike in the fact that we weren't as efficient as normal, because we have relied, even in this small team, hey, do you know where such and such is? And generally there's someone there that can tell you. So that actually alerted me to the fact that, we could do with some time spent on the way in which we store our information. So it's constantly evolving. And just take a moment, if you have got and you are working the tendering team, like at the moment, how much time do you spend looking for information for a tender on average? So just stop and take one moment within your current organisation, whether you have, you'll have probably different size tenders. Some will be small, some will be large, etc., etc. But on average, how much time do you spend just looking for the information? Don't worry about the collating it, but looking for the information. Yeah, it can be scary. It can be scary. So if you need today to walk away and actually pitch to the higher powers that you need to do something about your bid library, I'm just going to give you some benefits, and some of these that you will, they're pretty obvious, and others you might go, oh yeah, I hadn't actually thought about that. Obviously, the biggest benefit is that tenders, we have a set amount of time to create a document, and having a library maximises those efficiencies and obviously saves us time. We've just talked about how much time gets wasted looking for stuff. Put it in a central place, you've already saved yourself a lot of time. There's no need to reinvent a wheel. And I think that's super important in a couple of the other ones that I've got here about consistent messages and approaches, and that the information is validated. It's starting with a blank piece of paper is really difficult, and if someone has already spent a lot of time creating a response that has been validated and someone has approved and it has been part of a winning tender, why wouldn't we want to save that? And it's a bit of gold. Why wouldn't we want to hold on to that and place it somewhere so that it's not a one-off and it disappears? Why wouldn't we want to hold that information and maybe finesse it and modify it for another response, or at least use it to generate new ideas for us so that we're constantly evolving? Having that consistency of messages and approaches, are you in an organisation with multiple offices and maybe on a tender you've accidentally had two national offices actually submit a tender for the same project because the communication maybe hasn't been as strong as it should have been, and then you not only are stressed that you've both submitted something, but that they look completely different. They actually look like completely different organisations. And the client that has received those two independent tenders from your one business goes, ooh, what's going on here? This is weird. So having that consistency is incredibly important. As we all know, we're working in sales, and having that consistent message eliminates confusion on the part of a potential client or an existing client. And I will constantly stress that to people. You have to have consistency. Having validated information makes it so much easier. If the information is in a place where it has been validated, I don't have to go off and get approval from however your organisation is set up. It is approved and it's good to go, and that helps. Having this bid library will help your win rate over time as the information continues to evolve. So having random stuff in a central place, not going to help you. Having information that is clear, consistent, validated and strong that you can go to, you'll be able to complete 60% of the tender just by repurposing and reusing information from a bid library. So how amazing would that be? First draft, done, because you've actually got access to a strong bid library. The next one is one that it astounds me, the amount of organisations that I have gone to where they have maybe two people doing tenders, and I've been in a situation recently where one of those individuals was away for a couple of weeks and the other one was on a work assignment but overseas and impossible to contact. So the two people that knew how to put their organisation's tender together were not available. And there was a marketing team and there were other people in the business and no one knew where anything was. And it was a disaster waiting to happen. It could not have been. It was just one of those tsunamis of situations where you're like, oh my goodness, this just keeps getting worse. Every time I look at something, it's whoa. And it was a massive project that they were pitching for, but we honestly spent all of our time looking for stuff. We had no opportunity for strategy or creativity or problem solving or all the things that I know will help you to win the tender. Gone, absolutely gone. So their risk profile was huge and it was scary. And there were people in the team very, very stressed, as was I, about what we would do. So as we like to have the technical term in our industry, we had to MSU a little bit of stuff, which is the polite way of saying make stuff up. And that's not a great place to be. This was an established company that had already done good work and we should have been promoting that good work, taking what they had and moving on. So if you need today to just pitch at high powers on your organisation, this in itself is you've got to invest time, energy and resources. This is not an afterthought. And again, I've seen it. Oh yeah, we'll get to it when we get to it. We just keep moving. We're so busy. We're just going to keep going. And think worst case scenario. I mean, no one planned for us to all have to work remotely these last few months. It wasn't on my calendar for 2020. We've all had to do things differently. So today, stop, take a breath and just look at your process and what you aren't doing after today's webinar and get out there and do it different. This is your chance. Now, the information that you've got sitting on your screen at the moment is just a whole heap of stuff. stuff that is what I would call the basics for a bid library. This is not rocket science. You could have made up your own list, but it is just stuff. Now, we all know that stuff is only as good as the information, and what we do need is a system. So you need to have a system in your business of gathering, capturing, validating, and storing this information. So gathering, capturing, validating, and storing. So where do you grab it? How do you get it? How do you capture it? How do you make sure it is accurate and correct and not just a whole heap of fluff? And where are you putting it so that people can access it? And someone needs to control it. The best approach that I've ever seen is when it's actually in someone's job description to own this library. This library, information is gold, and I don't understand why people don't put more emphasis on the fact that there's all this information no one's managing. So have an information manager, whether they're a library manager, a document controller, whatever they are. Nominate someone within the business to actually own the bid library so that it is their job to keep it running smoothly and to keep it up to date. Of course, they need to have other people as part of that contributing, but someone's got to own it. And if there's no ownership, it'll never happen. So just make sure someone's owning it. The next thing is you need to look at your physical business and how does your business operate. So for some of you, it is in service offering. So you may set up the bid library to replicate the fact that you offer specific services. So for example, for us, we may have our library set up for branding, for tenders, for copywriting, for design, and we might look at having it set up in those ways for our specific examples. You know, the other ways are sector. It might be that your industry is very sector focused. So unless you've worked in the medical field, don't even bother pitching for the work. So that is how you would need to set up your library. It might be that it needs to be by client or project or department, whatever it is. There's no one size fits all here. You individually have to determine the best way of setting up specifically for what it is that you offer. And you will know that. A quick review of the types of tenders that you're pitching for, what you do as an organisation, there is information that's already there for you. The other thing is in that capturing of information, and this is a system that worked incredibly well as long as someone owns it. Systems are only as good as those that are managing it. Included in your HR induction process. So when someone joins your organisation, if they're a fee earner, are you capturing the CV information? Is there a questionnaire that they fill in? Have you got a CV template? Is there something that they need to populate? Are they required to have a professional photo taken so that that's there ready to go? Do they then have their LinkedIn profile updated so that there's not this disconnect when then their CV is included in a tender and then if you went and looked at LinkedIn, that information's like 10 years old? Are there project closeout sheets, or how do you go about capturing project information? Is it that one is set up at the beginning and then there's scheduled check-ins that, you know, projects are projects. We are capturing information. How does that then feed back into your system? So if you make it part of your structure and the way in which you're internally set up, the information becomes more automated and it starts to actually come into the bid library. But it needs to start as early as physically possible, and even including in your induction process the importance of tenders and making sure that everyone within the organisation understands that they will play a part whether it just be providing a document to go into a tender or actually participating in a tender process. Setting that up at the beginning is cultural as well, and it does help. You know, do you, at the end of putting in a tender, a bid, do you have that closeout where you actually go, from this tender, these sections were phenomenal. We really pushed it and it worked a treat. We need to capture this and we need to put it somewhere safe so that it's not forgotten and that the whole organisation can access this amazing quality information that will evolve over time. You've got to store it centrally. No point having it on your desktop, no point just having it on if you've all got different servers in your organisation. You've got to find a way to store this information centrally, and as I said, keep validating it and keep updating it. You've got to have that ongoing management. So this is like any job. There needs to be some KPIs, there needs to be a system, there needs to be a process, there needs to be a procedure. What are your expectations? If there are none, well, what were you expecting? No one knows. So you've got to actually outline what the expectations are. And one of the other things is having a logical file structure. Sounds really simple, but you need to, again, culturally get that you've got to create something that everyone can find information. It needs to make sense, so don't complicate it. It's all about keeping it as simple as physically possible, but if I can't find what you've created, it'll become a little bit difficult. And the other things that you need in here as an absolute must are the things such as your agreed terminology, your writing guides, your style guides, your file naming conventions. Like, again, these are all processes and procedures, and I now understand how I'm supposed to do my job. So that is just a must-have. Tracy, did you say there are a couple of questions? Sorry, we've just had a couple of questions come through. And I'm just having a quick look, sorry. Okay, so I'm coming around to Rebecca has asked, have you seen any good practices around collecting and keeping a repository of recently completed bids in multidisciplined companies with multiple servers of information? I'm going to show you a piece of technology, Rebecca, so stick with this. And Owen has asked that often contractors are brought in to manage or lead tenders. How do you navigate the process for gathering information and lesson learned? So I will come to that, Owen. They're really good questions. So now that we've captured all this validated quality information that's stored, there's still a bit of a debate that takes place about repurposing and reusing content. There's the copy and paste scenario where people have blatantly just copied and pasted and shoved it into another document. They haven't altered it, they haven't modified it. They've left the incorrect company or project and it's a disaster waiting to happen. Copying and pasting is not okay. So you need to put some context around the stuff that you have. The best way of doing that is to sort of go, this will give you an idea or an approach on how to answer a question like X, so that it's pretty much giving them 60% of their response, and then they've got to add the additional 40% to evolve it and tailor it specifically to that tender. Going back to what I said earlier, starting with a blank piece of paper is super difficult for pretty much everyone I know. So to have something to get the juices flowing, we take inspiration from everywhere. And sometimes I'll read something and I'll go, that's now sparked an amazing idea. I might not even use that, but it sparked where I need to go. You know, have you ever had that where you're like, that's so wrong, I now know I need to go over here? So having some context around and having some examples, this is the type of question that was asked and this is the way that we answered it around certain topics, is again gives that little bit of clarity and setting the context to tell people this is only going to give you 60% of what you need. You need to do the work to get the extra 40% to tailor it specifically. The reason for repurposing and reusing as well is content costs money. It's super expensive, and it's super important that you've got this baseline for people to work with. Do not copy and paste and walk off. Take it and tailor it. Use it as your bench to do your 60% first draft, and then continue to evolve. Feed it back into the system if you create something even better. Just do it. At the end of every tender, you should be reviewing that tender. I get out my good old highlighter again and go, these were the best bits of this tender. They were gold. Going to use them again. They were awesome. Loved the approach to this, loved the terminology. And this was the question that was asked. And that can then be quickly placed into the central depository for people to take and modify and continue to use. As long as the context is there, that's the important piece of that puzzle. So technology, Rebecca, you asked. There's loads of technology out there, but can I just preface this with technology is only as good as the system of how we're going to manage it and what we're going to throw into that technology. So I often say the technology comes last. Some people go out and go, oh, I need this thing. It's going to make everything so much easier. The thing will, if you've done that hard work to feed into that thing that you're going to purchase. So it's super important that you create a master document, you have a wireframe, and that you actually have all the stuff ready to go to populate the system that you purchase. I cannot stress that enough, and every business is completely different. Now, the one that I've got up on the computer at the moment is actually locally made, which is kind of exciting here in Brisbane, and it's by an organisation called BidHive. They are incredibly helpful. This product is evolving. It's growing. They do tendering, they get tendering, they're coming at it from an actual hands-on perspective, and our experience with it to date has been incredibly positive. So the good news is we're associated with them, but they're actually offering a 2-week free trial at the moment if you wanted to go and check it out. So BidHive. And as I said, they're based here in Brisbane. So the really good part of that is that if you're having issues or you want to ask questions, they actually get back to you in real time, which, as we all know, can be half the battle sometimes. So that's a great depository. And the other one as well is a couple of people that have joined today are actually already using Templify. So again, this works really well for those big multidisciplined companies with multiple servers. It's a one-stop shop, and it can be managed from whether you've got a marketing team, sales team, or whatever, from the branding element and the content. So that's actually another one that's worthwhile having a look at. Oh, and just going back to your question about when contractors are brought in to manage or lead tenders, how do you navigate the process for gathering information, lessons learned? There should be a system within your organisation to have a project closeout. So when we're engaged, for example, to do a tender, we always have a debrief session at the end of it, and we always give feedback on opportunities for improvement, opportunities, or even just telling them what they're doing incredibly well. That is an integral part of that growth and evolve piece, and really that's something that you must implement within your organisation. This is our expectation when we bring you in as a team or a contractor, that at the end of this process we're going to have a debrief with you, and you know that we ourselves have specific sort of templates set up so that we're populating it as we go. As issues may arise, good things happen, we kind of want to have a document to close out at the end and go, here's what we could have done better, and here's some opportunities for improvement next time. So I feel like hopefully there's been enough information today for you to stop, take a breath, review what you've been doing, and look, there's probably a whole heap of that you've been doing really well, and you know what, hey, say, wow, we're actually nailing this. But then there's always ways of doing things better. Don't get too caught up in technology until you've actually worked out internally how you're even going to funnel all your stuff into that technology. So really have a look at your process and your procedures and make sure this is actually part of someone's job, and set those expectations and KPIs. Look, there's Teams as well from a technology perspective we use quite a lot when we're working remotely with organisation. You can have shared servers. There's so many different things out there. And at worst, just have a master document in Word that links to the stuff that people need to go out and find. Particularly if you're a small business and investing in these pieces of technology makes absolutely no sense. There is nothing wrong with Word or an Excel spreadsheet, whatever is going to make it work for you. So look, I really hope everyone's taken something from today and that improvements are made in your bid library so that you can create your ultimate bid library and continue to win. So go out there and make it happen, and have an awesome week, and we'll hopefully see you soon. Take care. Bye.